All right. Hello, students. Today we are going to discuss really one of the major figures of modern world history. This guy is as significant and as influential as anybody in the 20th century. One of the most studied, most interesting. He's one of those revolutionaries. People are inspired by him, but he's also got this horrible dark side. He killed a lot of his own people. So this is one of these people who is a great tug of war of history. We're going to look at some numbers. They're pretty bad. But still one of the very fascinating stories of modern world history. His name is Mao Zedong. You can see the years he was alive. Look, this is a World War II, Cold War era individual of the 20th century. Like I said, one of the most well-known people of the 20th century. We sort of call him a theorist, soldier, statesman, politician. How's that sound? But the key I would sort of throw in here is he's a Marxist. And this is very much a part of his makeup. He is a communist. When communism is thriving during the 20th century, if you were to go to China today, you would see images of Mao all over the place. He is still revered. He is still looked upon as their greatest modern leader. He is the main architect of what we sort of think of when we think of modern China. So this story may sound familiar. The Chinese had basically early in Mao's life, all right, there was basically a revolution. For centuries, as you know, for centuries and centuries, and really millennia, I would argue, China had been ruled by emperors. They had an emperor system that was very specific. They had some foreign emperors at certain times, like the Mongols. Kublai Khan was a foreign ruler, but ruled as a Chinese emperor. And this system lasted a very long time. But in 1911, there was a revolution, and you can see that this is right when he's about an 18-year-old person. This is when this revolution is successful. And dare I say, here we go. We have a society that goes from oligarchy to republic. All right, isn't that fascinating? Now, you've heard that story before in this class, haven't you? The last ruling dynasty, you'll see different spellings. Quin, you might even see it spelled Q-I-N. These ending dynasties, the dynasty comes to an end and we have a republic. And it's basically in the sort of classic the early attempts of just like other societies to create a democratic republic society. However, the Communist Party exists within China. And Mao, after this time period of revolution, he switches to what we call the CCP. We still sort of, historians, news pundits still call it the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. Now, why would Mao participate in a revolution to create a republic, but then switch to the Communist Party? Well, he went away to college. I mean, that's dare I say, some people would argue that's normal for a young person that goes away to college. They get influenced by ideals of the left and ideals of they're exposed to different thought processes, and apparently Mao was exposed to Marxist communist education. But also there's a second reason, and I think that this is important to bring up. And this story is not going to be without its discussion of European powers. So World War I comes to an end while Mao is just recently finished with the university. And one of the things that the Western powers did, and we will see this they do this in the Middle East, is that the Western powers of Europe, really the British and the French to a degree, they redraw borders all over the Eastern Hemisphere. And one of the things that happened after World War I is that small portions of China were given to Japan, the arch enemy of the Chinese. And so because Western European nations were democratic republics, even though some had kings, of course, this young man, Mao, sees that. He doesn't want anything to do with it. That's another reason why he becomes a communist. So the communists rise. They rise in the Chinese Republic government, in what we will call the nationalist government. So we're going to use this term instead of republic for this period of time. Even though here I have the word republic again, my point is that we're going to call them the Chinese nationalist government, which has attempted to be a democratic republic type place. And the communists exist. The Communist Party, if you will, is allowed to exist within the nationalist government. Because that's what republics do. They allow different points of view. They allow different parties. And the communists get established. There's communists that get, they make alliances within the nationalist government. They win some elections, etc. They're not the majority by any means, but they certainly exist within the process. Now, you may have heard of these two famous nationalists. One of them should be familiar to those of you on Maui, especially upcountry Maui. His name was Sun Yat-sen. And Sun Yat-sen, the reason why I say he is should be recognizable to you for those of us on Maui is that there's a park. We have a park called Sun Yat-sen Park, upcountry Maui, where there's a statue of this man. And Maui and a city in Japan, a city in China were like sister cities. So that's how it started. Probably the more well-known one is a guy named Chiang Kai-shek, and then he'll be the focus of our continuation of the story. I'll call him CKS. Chiang Kai-shek is the most well-known. Sun Yat-sen passes away. He's older. Chiang Kai-shek takes over the nationalist government. And Chiang Kai-shek really saw the communists as a threat to his leadership, dare I say, he would say to the country of China in and of itself. So what he tries to do is purge. You should recognize that word from Stalin. He tries to purge, he tries to get rid of the communists in the Chinese government. He tries to get them out of there. Okay? As this whole thing goes along, this is the late 20s, and let me come back to this sort of thought process in just a moment. One of the things that Marxists have struggled with, Karl Marx himself basically said that workers will eventually revolt. It just is going to happen. There's no question about it. Workers will just sort of automatically do that. Well, that's one of the things that Marx was wrong about. And in many cases, in fact, most cases, workers don't really revolt because the work they do actually raises their standard of living in many places where there's been an industrial rise in a particular society. The working people have moved up into middle class status. They are not necessarily naturally prone to, as Marx predicted, revolting. And so Mao realized this. Lenin realized this. And so they had to look other places to, if you will, find revolutionaries, to find revolutionary leaders. And so this discussion about how Marx believed in an urban proletariat that would lead the way on this communist revolution. Russia and China were not really highly industrialized. They have agricultural peasants. So this is the same thing. You may recall this when I brought this up about Lenin, is that, okay, we got to look at what are our masses? You know, Marx talked about the masses of the urban proletariat. What are our masses? Well, our masses are agricultural peasants. And so those are the ones we need to get going to start the Marxist revolution. Okay, so now let's go back to the nationalists and this whole thing. And I'm going to say that the Chinese nationalists under Chiang Kai-shek are hardly Jeffersonians. They're not, this is just a term that I use to sort of describe how Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson in American history, certainly was not interested in purging anybody who was a non-republic person from society at the beginning. Chiang Kai-shek was. Chiang Kai-shek tried to destroy fellow Chinese who were communists throughout the 20s and 30s, as I mentioned up above just a moment ago. And this is going to cause a rift. This is going to cause a major rift in the Chinese population. And as you can guess what is going to happen, eventually we're going to see a showdown between Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong. There's a lot of discussion about Mao, how Mao becomes the leader of the communist wing, the Communist Party, etc. But generally, the easiest way for me to sort of put this is that by the early 30s, Mao is without a doubt recognized as the leader of the Chinese Communist Party. Okay, so now what is really going to put this guy Mao officially on the map? I mean, what's going to really make him different and somebody super significant? Well, it's a particular event called the Long March. The Long March is really, frankly, quite remarkable. It was, in essence, literally that. It was a long walk that took nearly a year. And basically, what happened was, right around a year, is that Mao led what was ultimately an escape. They had to escape some urban areas where, as I mentioned, the communists were getting purged. The nationalists were hot on the tail. The Chiang Kai-shek had really put a push. Let's really nail all these communists and literally let's get rid of them. And when I say get rid of them, I literally mean that. Let's get rid of these. Let's get them killed. Let's put them in jail. And we're going to get rid of these communists once and for all. And basically, the Long March was an escape where several thousand communist Chinese walked out of there. They literally walked for 6,000 miles, ultimately, in essence, escaping from one area to another. That's the easiest way for me to sort of put that to you. But to understand and comprehend what they did, 6,000 miles is the general estimate that most people assume was the distance that they traveled. Now, this became world news, and people understood what was going on. And dare I even say, this garnered sympathy in the rest of the world for the Chinese communists. And it garnered sympathy in the rest of the world because people in the rest of the world were impressed. Oh my God, look what they accomplished. They walked so far. All right? Now, there's a second part of this story that we need to make sure we understand, and that is the rise of an... See if this sounds familiar. You have two groups of people with really opposing thought processes and ideas, the nationalists and the communists. They don't have too much in common. Well, I suppose they're Chinese and they speak Chinese, but they don't have too much in common in the way they sort of see things. But they do have one thing in common, and that is an enemy that they realize they cannot defeat individually on their own. And that enemy is on the rise. The industrial power, the Japanese, are on the rise, right, literally, off the coast of China. So now what do we do? What do the Chinese do? They both sort of, instead of eyeing each other, what do they have to do? They have to look over their shoulder at the Japanese. And sure enough, that's exactly what Japan does. Japan eventually invades China in 1937, and many people sort of pinpoint this. We talked about the German invasion of Poland in 1939. Many people say, well, this is actually the very first event of World War II, the Japanese invasion of China. And really, the Japanese will occupy much of China throughout World War II. That's something that a lot of Americans sort of forget. And basically, what I would say is that the Chinese nationalists and the Chinese communists had to sort of work together here. It was not very perfect working together. It was not very easy. It was almost like, look, the Americans and the British, they sort of saw, and to a degree the Russians, they sort of saw the nation of China as kind of like two allies. We kind of have two allies against the Japanese. We don't have one single ally in China. We have to deal with two allies within China, the nationalists and the communists. And this made this made it more difficult, to be completely honest with you. And I call it simultaneous warfare, but not coordinated warfare against the Japanese. And really, why? Well, they both distrust each other. And what I mean by this is the nationalists and the nationalists and the communists don't trust each other going forward. And they know, and frankly, both sides know, that there's going to be a full power struggle at the end as this thing as the war comes to an end. There will be a power struggle. In fact, that's exactly what happens. The Japanese, as you all know, were defeated in 1945. Civil war does erupt in China between the nationalists under Chiang Kai-shek and the communists under Mao Zedong. And that lasts sort of, if you will, for about a 4-year time period. And really who emerges, there's a lot of details, there's a lot of blame, there's a lot of influence, there's a lot of discussion within the United States. Did we let a good ally like Chiang Kai-shek, did we allow him to lose because we were because the Soviet Union wanted Mao to be victorious because they knew that if Mao wins, then China becomes a communist country. And there's a lot of discussion in the United States. Did we allow a good ally like Chiang Kai-shek to be defeated just to help out the Soviets create another communist nation? Did that add to the severity of the Cold War? And so after this, what China becomes is something that the nation of China becomes known as the People's Republic of China. And so isn't this interesting? This is a communist nation, but what word do they throw in there? A rule of law society. But there you see the reference to communism, Marxism, the People's Republic of China. And that's what it's known as today. It's sometimes referred to as Red China. Because red, of course, is the international symbol of communism. What happened to Chiang Kai-shek? Well, the Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalists flee to an island called Formosa. If you take a look at a map, of China, you will see this. You'll be able to see this island on the map. And the nationalists go there and they create what their nation, they call it the Republic of China. Now, you may know it as Taiwan. And so this is where the nationalists ended up. Chiang Kai-shek ended up there. Okay. All right. Now let's move to this, and then I'm going to stop this, and we'll come back next time with you, and I will do part 2. So this will be the last sort of thing I will point out. We're going to get into something called next significant event we should look into is something called the Great Leap Forward. The Great Leap Forward was a significant event having to do with Mao. I want you to make sure you watch part 2 of Mao Zedong. There is something very particular that I would like you to see within that next part. And then so what I'll do is I'll just sort of leave you with this picture of him as a young man during his really sort of young life leadership time period. This may even be a picture of him even before he's the leader. But that is Mao Zedong right there. Okay? All right. So we will come back to, like I said, he's an interesting one. Very, very fascinating person. We're just sort of barely scratching the surface here now that World War II is over and the Chinese Civil War is over. We're just scratching the surface about this guy. So let's come back next time and we will finish the story. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. Hope you learned something new today. All right? Next time. Bye.